Hello and welcome to the Separating Logic and UI Code Rage video. My name is Jeff Lefebvre. I'm an Embarcadero MVP as well as technology partner. I am currently studying for my Project Management Professional Certificate and my Microsoft Certified Software Developer Certification. You can catch me on Twitter at Pascal Coder. I also run the Delphi Tips Twitter, where you can see weekly, bi-weekly tips on the latest Delphi tips that will help you code in Delphi. If you want to check out my blog, it's kiwistamp.ca. I update that on a monthly basis. Or you can check me in on LinkedIn, Jeff Lefebvre. You can see the link right there. Alright, let's get on with the show. Every project that we've ever been in has been affected by this: risk. What is risk? Risk is the chance of something affecting your project either negatively or positively. Now, what can we do to reduce the risk? Well, what we can do is let the project go on and the risk will naturally decrease. But what happens is, if we do not reduce the risk at the beginning of the project, the cost of changes will increase faster than what the risk will decrease at as the project goes on. So if we decrease the risk, the cost of changes down the line will also decrease. So what can we do to reduce risk? Well, we can add maintainability and testability, which will reduce risk in your project. The longer a project goes on, the cost of changes increase. So naturally, we try to reduce these costs. What can we do? Well, we can develop a project that is easy to maintain and easy to test. This will result in high revenue and low risk to the company. What can we do to make our program more maintainable? Well, we add source control. What this does is it gives your program full versioning as you make your changes. It also allows you to scale your team up, allowing multiple developers to work on the same code at the same time without having to worry about people overriding their changes. And if it even does happen, you have full control and you can properly merge the changes. Next thing you could do is make your code readable. By making your code readable, you reduce the time it takes for a new developer to look through the code, and it reduces the chance of errors because they do not get confused between the different names of units and variables. Finally, and this main topic of this session, is separating your UI from your logic. This allows you to re-implement your work into different contexts. It also makes your program more testable, and it allows you to add more functionality later on without being tied down from the UI. So, what does separating the UI and logic do exactly? Well, it allows you to expand your project to other platforms such as Android, iPhone, and Macintosh, thanks to Delphi XE5. It allows you to scale your application up with multi-threading. As I said before, it adds maintainability and testability, adding unit tests and making your code more modular and structured. As a result, your project will have less risk for your company because the quality of your code will increase, the number of issues will decrease, and the amount of time it takes to make changes will be reduced substantially. Alright, to begin, we're going to take a look at an application that I've developed. This will serve us as a template of what we could do to optimize an application. I've taken some examples that I've seen from other people, some from my past history, and what I was able to improve on. So let's take a look. Alright, so here's the result application. It looks normal, by any other standard. You can add, right, so we can type a description. This is a little thing I just quickly drafted up, so you press two numbers like that, and you press total, give you a total here, and then you press save, like that, and there you go. You can press alter, you can click this guy, alter, and you can change the total to be 5. There you go. Total will be 5. And you can press the refresh button if you want. You can remove them, just like that. Super easy. And so you can click close. It's a pretty straightforward application. As soon as you dig a little deeper, though, you notice that there is a lot of things that are kind of odd. You notice that typically you have add, edit, and delete. Here we have add, alter, and remove. We also have refresh and close, the refresh being extremely close to the close button. Also, if we were to just decide to show a little bit more data, if we had a longer list, if we try to stretch this, you notice that, hey, nothing is really moving around. It's not really scalable to the screen here. If we click add, it's pretty much the same thing here. All right, so let's see what we got. We're just a new developer. We're going to take a look and see what we can do to improve on this. All right, so I have Delphi here. All right, so what we got? Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 2 edit. Oh boy. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so Unit 1 appears to be the main screen, and then Unit 2 is that, and then Unit 2 edit is the same thing. Okay, so it looks like the edit also has add order, so it looks like whoever made this simply copied it and then made the Unit 2 edit the edit window of the add order screen. Okay. Alright, so we got our connections right on the main form here. Connection and query, these are requirements for FireDAC. Let's take a look at add. Okay, we're just so we're just show modeling the form. Apparently the form name is add. Just check here. Yep, it's just add. And edit is edit order. Oh yeah, because if we just call it edit, it'd be called t-edit, and then the application would start. So of course. All right, so show model. Then it presses a button after. What's that? Okay. Oh, it's the refresh. Yeah, it's refreshing. Okay. Yeah. So here's as you can see, it's really hard to navigate. We're show modeling, and then we're refreshing. How do you know if a person pressed cancel or not? And imagine if we didn't have this here. You'd be clicking around a lot just to figure out what's going on, just by simply trying to figure out what's going on. So alter is the same thing. Okay, looks like we're adding some data to the edit form. Looking at the selected.subitems 1 and 0, and then show modal again, and then we refresh. Apparently, remove. It's to query right at the button level. Okay, refresh is the button, of course, and close is just terminates the application. All right, so we got some work ahead of us to try and improve on this. But where do we start? Well, before we start going around and start mucking about with things, one of the first things we should do is add some source control to this. Making any changes without source control, especially of this nature, adds a lot of risk to the project. And if you accidentally made a mistake, you added a bug, you'd have no way of rolling those changes back. So there's a whole bunch out there, as you saw in the slides. So we've got perforce, we've got subversion. Oh, my Office is done installing. Sweet. You've got perforce, subversion. You can install Git. Perforce, yep, free for small teams. You can just by yourself install it on a computer somewhere or on your local machine. I thought it would be better if you had it on 2 machines. Your server on a different machine, you can install it on here and there. If you're looking for some hosted ones, GitHub, Bitbucket, Assembler, and Unfuddle are a couple options. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to use GitHub. We're going to go to github.com here. There we go. Alright, so I've already created an account, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to source control a project like this using GitHub. So don't use GitHub if you're doing a private project, but GitHub is perfect for open source projects like this one. But creating a repo is pretty similar in that knowledge transfers between the different kinds of source control systems. So I'm going to create a new repo right here. I'm already logged in. I want to call this Code Rage 8. There we go. No description. I'm going to keep it public. Private, you do have to pay the money if you want to put a private project up there. But for open source, you want to keep them open to the public. It's completely free. And hey, we can initialize this repository with a README. Yep. And we're going to add the Delphi Git Ignore file. Here it is. And what the Git Ignore file is it when you're adding files to a source control repository, by default it just adds everything. It looks through the folder and it just adds the DCUs, the project files, the forms, any other files you put in there. What GitHub has is a template of files that most projects would ignore, which is the DCUs, the binaries, and any other assemblies. So you can customize this, of course, but typically the default Delphi Git Ignore file would be good enough for you. So we're going to create that repository, and hey, there it is. It's done. We've got a README file that we can edit, and we can send the link to our friends. And we're going to go download the client now. Windows.github.com. Download it. There we go. I'll go and install it now. Alright, so we're going to launch this guy. The main console will come up. It took me a little bit to get myself oriented with this, but after a while I did get used to it. You can watch me navigate this, see what you need to do. So you log in, and then you type in your password. Okay. So yeah, we can continue here. Repositories. All right, so we got no local repositories. Of course, we just installed it. So I have repositories up on GitHub. Here they are. So I have a few projects here, but we don't have any on my computer. So we're going to go head over to the dashboard to add one. We can click our account on the left side. We're going to right click Code Rage 8 repository. Then we'll click clone to. Then we'll select our folder. Now, because this is a GitHub repository, we should really group our repositories into a folder. So I'm going to create a new folder inside the Rad Studio projects folder called GitHub. And then select this folder as our folder. So that will go and download. There it is. And then we can right click and open Explorer. And there we go. We got our GitHub Code Rage 8. So all we got to do now is to add this project to GitHub is to copy those files from our project into here. So Code Rage 8, we'll just select everything. Go to the GitHub Code Rage 8, paste it, and then this should automatically detect our changes. There they are. So we've added our database, the DPR, the res file, then our units, and we'll just commit message. Alright, so we'll just initial add. There we go. So the cool thing about GitHub is that I committed my changes, but I did not send my files yet. So I can continue making changes and then sync those files the next chance I get. So that actually saves a lot on bandwidth, especially on remote work, on remote sites. So for this purpose, we'll just sync up our files. It will now go and start uploading. Alright, so we can begin our work to transform our Code Rage 8 example from a standard that is, rain in the buttons into a more multi-tiered system. Alright, so we'll just minimize this guy. We're done with Chrome. Yeah, we're done with them. Alright, so we'll go and open up a project in Delphi. Okay, so yeah, we could just start making changes, and GitHub will actually track them. It will just notice when we make the changes. Then when we feel we're at a checkpoint, then we go and commit our changes. All right. So one of the first things we should do is rename our units. These kind of changes are very little risk to your organization. All we're doing is renaming aliases, and what this provides is a lot of insight into how your application works without having to navigate everywhere. So we could just start renaming right now, and of course it's not going to compile anymore, but we will understand what they are as we're compiling. So unit 1, we'll just call this form main, and this is the convention I follow. If you have your own convention, you should follow that. If you don't have a convention, this is one that works for me, so you're welcome to follow it as well. Of course, you'll see these changes up on GitHub, and you can download them and see them for yourself. So we'll call this form main, and then the form is actually also called form main, except it's missing the O, like that. All right, so we'll go to unit 2. Now that was the add, I believe, so we'll call this form orders add. All right, and then we'll double click on here, and this will be called form order add, and this one form order edit. Form order edit. Whoop. Whoop. I was looking at the wrong thing. Edit. There we go. Whoop. The reason why the O is missing from the form on the actual class is because the class name and the unit name cannot be the same for resources inside the project, so that's why you have a missing O. And it also follows the 3-character prefix for components in Delphi, and it follows everything else like EDT, BTN, LBL for everything. All right, so we will go on and try to compile this. All right, of course there's errors. All right, so we got unit 2. So unit 2 was the add, so we just go form add. Oh, form order add. All right, so we'll compile this against. That's because of that. Form order edit. Take that out. List. All right, so there we go. We have the exact same project. Nothing's really changed about it. All we've done is rename some essential units, making this project that much more readable. So now, just looking at the project, I know exactly how what is going on in here. So we got an order add, we got 2 forms, add and edit, and we have a list. Okay, now that we've made our essential changes here, we're going to take a snapshot of what we've done so far and submit it to GitHub. So we're going to go to GitHub, and we're going to just take a look and see if there's any differences. All right, so it notices that I deleted those units and I added some others. So that's why you should have your form names nailed down before you start. Otherwise, you'll begin to lose track of what changed to what. So be sure to follow a convention. On the initial submit, it's not too bad, but however, down the line you want to ensure you follow a standard on naming convention. So we're just going to change this to changed unit names. Straightforward, commit it, and we'll sync it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take these queries that we have executed right at the button level, and we're going to move them to their own units. This is a step that a lot of people are hesitant towards doing because it does add a lot of risk. However, if you can pull this off, you make your application infinitely more scalable, much more testable, and you can actually add unit tests to your project now. Since you've abstracted your logic from your form. So let's take a look. We have our select statement here. We've got the edit query right inside those dialogues. We've got our add, same thing. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a class that's all about adding, editing, and selecting this data. Now you think, okay, so how are we going to transfer this data back and forth? All right, so what we're going to do is create an object called order. It's pretty straightforward. It will have a description, a total, and an ID. And we're going to use that to pass the data around, to act as a transport between these different units. So we're going to create a new unit right in here. I'm going to call it a straight up order. That's the convention I follow. If it's not a form, if it's just a regular class, you just call it what it is, order. Though you shouldn't call it there, you should be calling it here. That way it'll automatically name it for you. There you go. All right, we're going to create a class here. Now we're just going to zip ahead very quickly as I write this guy up. Okay, so I've created this quick class here. It's prompting for where I should save order. Should be right here. Yep, why not? There we go. All right, so we're now going to use this to pass the data back and forth. All right, so we're going to create now our class that handles these queries. I'm going to call it order handler. Like that. And we're going to take the queries from those 3 units and we're going to put them in here. So we're going to zip ahead as I type this up. Okay, so we've got our handler class right here, ready to go. Now we're going to take the queries from the units. So what we got to do is we got to isolate what is going in and out. So we notice that we have a query that is being executed, and that query requires a connection. So what we're going to do is when we're going to create our handler class, since all of our units require a query, require a connection, we're going to add a constructor that takes in that connection, and they're going to keep that on standby as a public field, no, as a private field. Okay, so now that we have the connection in here, we're going to start migrating our queries. Alright, so what we've got here is we've got a query in here, but we've got a connection that we're managing. So what we're actually going to do, instead of having a single query accessed by all of our SQL statements, is we're just going to instantiate that query as we need it. Okay, so one thing that I noticed here is that we're not using parameters in the query. Using parameters in a query is one of the essentials of developing a secure application. So I'm just going to demonstrate this to you for this query here, how to do that. So all you have to do is, if it's a non-looping query, you could just go ahead and add that parameter. If you're doing a loop, you actually get a huge performance benefit if you prepare it and then populate the parameters and then execute it, and you can just re-execute with the populated parameters, and you get a huge performance boost as well as security. But for this purpose here, we're just going to go ahead and just populate our query and then parameterize it. So we're going to add param by name. We're just going to call it call desk here. Then string. And we're going to populate it with the description that's coming in. Same thing for total. Okay, so now that we have our parameters populated, we will now add it to the SQL statement. Just notice an issue here. We just got to take these colons out. That actually goes in the SQL. So we just replace this with that, and replace that with this, and there we go. That should work. So we can test it out by running it. Okay, it compiles, good. We will now add it to the, we can add it to this unit here, just to test it out. Order handler. Cool. So instead of performing this query here, we create our order handler. So with torder handler dot create, passing in our connection. There we go. Do begin, and then we call add order. Description, that, and that. Oh, so this is not needed anymore. We have an error here. There we go. Alright, so we'll just throw a breakpoint here. Click the add button, start typing in some data, save. Alright, jump into here. Alright. When this happens, I just click a breakpoint at the next step. I like that. Alright, like that. And so just check what we're looking for. We're looking for 1, 2, 3 in the description and 4, 3, 5 in the total. And there it is. So that's actually pretty simple. And what does this enable? This enables the ability for you to unit test adding orders now. Just think about that. Now that we've abstracted the logic from the user interface, we can now take this function with this class, put into a different project, and test it in there. We can also reapply this logic to other projects. Okay, so now that we've created our add order query, I'm actually going to leave edit order blank to let you fork the repo and then try and submit your suggestions on how we could do that. I imagine it's actually going to be pretty similar to add. However, for get orders, I'm actually going to demonstrate to you how you would get a list of data from an object that is not in the UI. So we have our get orders, and we note, and then if you noticed, I added it as a T-list. T-list is just one way of doing it. You can also pass in an array of that object that I added of orders, but for T-list it serves a purpose for a quick throw-in. But it's easily swappable, which is really cool. Because what we've done is we're going to abstract this from the UI, so we could change it and then just make simple tweaks to the UI to make it adapt. So we're still good. Actually, what we should do is take a snapshot of this so you can see the difference between before I altered the query and after. So I did remember that I did comment out some stuff in form order add, and here it is. And the cool thing about source control is that you don't need to do this anymore. You can delete it and not have to worry about forgetting it or thinking, oh no, like what was it before? Because it's on source control, it's on GitHub, and you could just roll it back and take a look. I should add that. Oh no, the close is for the form. All right, so yeah, pretty straightforward. Bring up GitHub. Notice there's our differences here. We can actually take a look and see what the differences are, like that. And we'll just submit this. So added, so we call extracted, add order into its own handler, like that. And I'll sync it up. Okay, so now that we've committed our changes to GitHub, we will now take a look at taking our query that gets a list of orders, putting it in here, and then returning the list and populate it. So what we do is we just copy that query to begin with. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Here it is. So we're this is the query, takes results and loops through it. All right, we'll take that part out. Order handler, throw it in. All right, have our query. Like that. All right, so we go while not query.elf. So we're going to create a new instance of order and add it to the list. For the purposes of this procedure, we will assume that the T-list, that the orders list is already instantiated. We're not even going to check if it's not. If it's not instantiated for any reason, we should throw an exception. So we will go and take orders, order equals T order. Straightforward. Doesn't recognize what order is, not a problem. Add order. So now what we do is we go back to this main form here, and we go and instantiate our handler. Excellent. Alright, so it takes in a T-list, so we have to instantiate a T-list, so let's do that now. Pass in the orders, we get our orders, it's freed. Alright, now we loop the orders. Alright, so we got our order object from the T-list that was populated by the get orders function. Alright, so now we just, the caption had the ID. And then the next one was the description. What am I doing? Don't need that. And the last one was the total. All right. Now at the end, we do have to free the list. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to loop through the T-list, free the orders, then we're going to free the T-list. So while the orders dot count is greater than 0, again, T order the orders. This is what I usually do if I wanted to quickly, free everything. Now keep in mind, this doesn't take generics into effect. So with generics, it is much easier to manage your objects, but I'm using this that's compatible across a wide range of Delphi products. So then we delete our order, first orders, dot delete, 0. There we go. All right. So there we go. We don't need that. That should actually happen on a different point. We'll just, for the purposes of this, we will just have it on the create. Alright, so let's take a look at our refresh now. I think it's a lot cleaner. We've got our clear list view items. First thing we do is we create our orders T-list. We go and get the orders, and then we clear the list, we populate the list, and then we clear the orders. If we were to make a child of T-list and make a T-orders list, we could make it as part of the destructor of the free to go through and free the orders within it. But that's only in certain circumstances, because there's going to be times where you want those orders to be continually instantiated, so you got to use your best judgment here. But for the time being, because of this, we're just going to do that. And yeah, that's so one way of abstracting the logic from the UI, because the biggest benefit of this is, despite, there's definitely room for improvement here, but the key benefit of this whole thing that we're doing is the logic is now inside of a different unit. So now you can take get orders and then run unit tests on that now. Okay, so now that we've created this, let's take a look and see if it works. And it works. It's pretty straightforward there. Alright, so now that we know it works, let's go and submit another commit. So let's go ahead and get orders extracted. There we go. Sync it up. That's done. It's now available for you to take a look at. There is a lot of other things that could be improved in this project. I purposely made it very unorganized, so feel free to take a look at it and see the other changes that I've made, and maybe that can help you determine a way to perhaps improve on your application. If you want to check it out, the GitHub is GitHub/this/CodeRage8. You can clone in the desktop, fork it. Fork is simply taking your own little version of it. You'll see the changes that I make, and feel free to make changes yourself and do a pull request back to me, and then I'll take a look at it. This was the Separating Logic in UI session at CodeRage8. My name is Jeff Lefebvre. Feel free to follow me at Pascal Coder and Delphi Tips. Also, if you wish to contact me directly, you can contact me at my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, Jeff, it looks like you and Jim, if you want to go through, I'm recording this stupid stuff we're saying and bad things I'm saying after 2 days now of almost no sleep. So, Jim, if you want to go through with Jeff some of the ones that were asked, unless it was all about, there was some here like GitHub and so on.
So there's one here question about if it's safe to use GitHub in commercial products, since everybody could then see your source if it was public.
Yeah, so I haven't tried it for a private repo, but in that demo, there is an option to select a private, and then that's when they request for money. So I imagine that would be for commercial projects, but yeah, GitHub is known for open source projects, but if you want a private one, I would kind of suggest doing an on-premises server. That way you have more control over it, so Perforce or Subversion or local repo of Git. I would suggest that. But if you have people on remote sites, you could try GitHub for private, but I would look a little bit into it, make sure that you know what you're getting into, and then there's also TFS.
I've been on projects that have these GitHub for private projects, and
okay,
as far as I know, no one's got into it. It's
okay.
Good. So you get all the cool benefits of GitHub, except it's private, just for people on your team. So especially if you're on a distributed team, or if you want to have a maybe you're going to include people outside your organization as well. So anyway, someone says I use a stash of Atlassian as a Git repo manager.
Okay, so you get to manage multiple Git repositories with that. That's pretty cool. I see there's a question about parameters in queries. Using parameters in queries is more secure because you protect yourself from SQL injection. Simply plopping a string into a query allows a person who's somewhat familiar or bashing your system be able to take guesses on how to escape the current query and then start up a new malicious one, such as deleting tables or selecting results and then having those return as your profile name.
Yep.
So that's one security reason why you'd want to use parameters. Whenever I see non-parameterized queries at work, it's one of my first steps is to go in and fix it up.
Yeah,
and there's really no drawbacks to using parameters.
Yep. If as soon as someone puts a single quote in that text field, it destroyed the SQL, and then if they can get some information out of it, especially in websites, then they can get a dump. And then they start wreaking havoc. And then there's actually most databases, because the parameters SQL statements are presented differently to the database, it recognizes it's the same SQL statement every time, and so it can create an optimization for that, and then apply that parameters to it in order to produce a performance improvement.
I usually repeat
a story of one of our customers.
The developers don't do any SQL queries. Everything is through store procedures.
Oh, that's another way.
And especially since they're handling things like credit card data, social security numbers, bank accounts, and whatever, so the developers never see anything. They can pass parameters to the store procedure, but whatever happens inside the store procedure and the triggers and is some other team that does all that stuff in that server black box.
Yep, I have experience with that as well. What I found is it works extremely well for corporate environments where you have the resources to manage that, but on a smaller team, you do get that extra security because everything has to be parameterized, especially going through a stored procedure, but you get the drawbacks of much higher maintenance that if you want to add a single field, you have to add it to the stored procedure, the table, and then you have to add it to your query just like normal.
Yep.
And you have to add it to those other spots. So there's that extra layer that you have to consider. And querying data, I've also seen through views and stored procedures as well. But it's an extra layer, and it comes with all the baggage with it. So you have to consider security versus what the scope of your project is.
Yep. And T is posting in comment. He says he thinks all the SQL stuff must live on database side and start stored procedure triggers. You can change business logic when needed and agree. I mean, there's many reasons. For me, it was securing stuff that other people shouldn't see.
Yep.
Use data masking. There's all sorts of other mechanisms as well, encryption and so on. But I think the other thing is about changing logic.
Yeah,
You can compartmentize things into methods and stored procedures.
Yep. There isn't a one size fits all answer.
Sure.
Because there's a whole other option here of putting SQL in the middle tier, and then having you call the middle tier, and it does the SQL, and so then you can update the middle tier and update your business logic everywhere. So yeah, there's not one answer. It's important that you understand the risks and understand the pros and cons of each, and then that you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and then change is inevitable.
Yep.
In everything. So building changeability in or defensibility in, all that stuff is.
Yep. But rounding back to the point of this session is that if you separate your logic from your UI, so if we had these calls to store procedures right on the user interface, and then you have multiple forms and they're all calling the same stored procedure, adding another field to that stored procedure just multiplies the effort on making a single change. If you're to abstract that to a single method or class, then you make it a one spot, and then all the UIs automatically get that new change.
Yep, exactly. I was going to round back that way too. So, exactly that this, by the more you can consider how to break things up, the easier it is to maintain. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, hey, a whole bunch of questions came in. As someone who has fought with database performance on larger databases and consulted with some top SQL Server experts, I now strongly believe business logic should be kept out of the database layer. Let the database layer focus on doing what it is best, storing and retrieving data. Yeah, and that's a characteristic of the database performance, as well as different databases perform differently with their procedures and things along those lines. So, yeah, there's a lot of people that make a very strong argument that your database is for storing data. The question for his contact information again, if you could, or David will just type it in there.
Yeah, maybe just switch to that slide.
Actually,
where did I do?
Can you type in the contact, just contact information? No.
Look at it get there.
I can't talk.
Can't talk, type, and scroll at the same time. There you go. How's that? Is that it?
That's it.
Nope.
Okay.
So someone else says, separate your business logic from your database. Not? Question mark.
Well, in this case, yes, they are separate. But
right, because
the example I used was pretty simple. Like all it was doing updates and inserts and selects. But you can take that further, and then instead of doing orders.create and .add, or .add and .select, you could do .get total, and then pass in a customer. And so then you can have this method manage just getting the totals of the amounts for a specific customer. So that opens up the opportunity to add business logic. So there was a comment there that I was doing ORM stuff, and yes, at its core right now it is ORM, but you could potentially add more business logic into that T-orders class.
Right. Yeah, when you start separating out like that, yes.
T-orders, T-order handler.
There's a statement here that says, could you repeat the tip about FD connections?
Oh, FireDAC connections. Yeah, so I actually ran into an issue midway through the demo, and I'm pretty new at FireDAC, and I'm kind of used to UniDAC and TIV query, where the query.connection was in fact the exact same type that the connection itself was. So I just did exactly that. But it turned out that the FireDAC the FireDAC.connection is a descendant of the T-FireDAC connection. So when I took in T-FireDAC connection, it didn't like the T-custom connection, or T-FireDAC custom connection, so I had to cast it.
Okay. Someone's saying it would be nice to see what you just talked about handled with middle tiers.
Oh, that I really appreciate the compliment. Maybe that'll be a discussion for next Code Rage, or maybe I can write something up and make another video between the next Code Rage. But thank you very much for the compliment.
Lots of thank yous. Let's see, we're trying to control all business logic in database side. When we use DataSnap as a middle tier, we have to check some logistics on client side and DataSnap side, for example, mail validation, etc. What can we do? What else can we do, I guess is what he's saying. So you can, there's some things you can do. You can have like email address validations done through a, what's it called? Just a command call, not an actual post.
Oh, just do regular expression. Do it that way. Right,
but if you want to move it to the middle tier, you can post it through, I can't think of what it's called. In the data set, when you're, DataSnap doesn't have to be just about data sets.
Oh, we just have server methods.
Server methods, that's what it's called.
Sorry, I was sitting there trying, it's been a long 2 days, so I'm trying to go like, okay, server class, what do we call them? Oh, server method.
Yeah, server method. So you can push that through a server method as well. Yes.
There's some user-defined functions. I mean, there's, I don't know, uppercase. You can uppercase in your code. You could uppercase in those are built-in functions. I mean, aggregations, some on the database. But again, I'm not here to argue. I like to do everything in code, but I'm just crazy.
Another
I'm
option
not a database guy.
I've seen is some places share some of their validation, because you're writing your middle tier, DataSnap middle tier in Delphi, and you're writing your client in Delphi. So you can have that code that performs the validation compiled into both the client and the middle tier. And so that way you can do your validation at your client to prevent a round trip to your middle tier if that's a concern.
Yeah. I mean, wherever possible, right? You don't want to have to send data that's going to be rejected.
Exactly.
If you can check some of it, like required fields, you don't do that after sending it to the server side.
Mm-hmm.
You do it right then, right?
Yep. Of course, the middle tier needs to be the ultimate gatekeeper and say, whoa, hey, you missed the required field.
Okay. Again,
I totally agree there. Yeah. There should be client side and then a little last check to make sure everything's good.
Yep. Check all along the way, but I mean, I don't want to send if possible, I don't want to send stuff through the network, or if you're on mobile through 3G or whatever. If you can do something on the client side.
Yep. So Martin wants to know if your blog is in Delphi feeds yet, Jeff.
It is not. It is not populated quick enough, but I don't make blogs frequent enough, but I plan to have that change. But once I get going in there, I'm not too sure what the process is in getting into Delphi feeds.
I know I can do somebody, and once you're going, let me know and I'll get you.
Yeah,
I can
email Dennis.
Yep. Yeah, he's
Dennis Garrett. Yeah.
They don't want
not yet though. Wait until there's a
flooded with emails, but if there's a good blog, if we let them know though.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't you think it's much easier to maintain a fully fledged object model in a DataSnap server that is modeling your business logic than to have thousands of ugly SQL lines in a database server? I do. So yeah, there's pros and cons of each.
Except if you're a SQL developer and using Rapid SQL and a database administrator. Again, we have a whole side of the business which sells tools, data modeling tools, SQL data development tools, SQL performance tuning and optimization and profiling tools, change management tools for SQL metadata and SQL. So when I'm visiting those customers, because we're also tying the two together, developer tools and database tools, we have interesting conversations. Sometimes they sit on each side of the table.
It all depends down to the context of the project.
Yep, and I've worked on projects that were had strong DBA influence, and they definitely had a different architecture than projects that had strong, maybe started on the developer side or didn't have a strong DBA influence for whatever reason. And because people have a specific way of do things, and people know more about different domains of knowledge, and that influences it all. So, like I said, there's not a good answer. It really comes down, what Jeff talked about here is the idea of making sure that you're modular, right? And so if he wanted to move this into a middle tier, he now was be more flexible because of the way his architected is. And so by following the practices Jeff talked about, then that makes you more flexible and more ready to handle the changes in the future.
The database techniques I used was used as a prop or example, while the focus is actually about separating the two and what you could think about and what you can do once you do that.
Yeah, the idea of, I mean, that with Delphi, and we've talked about this before, is that with Delphi it's easy to double click on the button and write the code, but then it's not as maintainable. So that's what Jeff's talking about, how to properly separate things.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of IDEs do that. The only one that is difficult to do that for, what I've experienced so far, is Cocoa. The iPhone UI, you have to create the methods first, and then you hook it up, and it's not quite a simple double click.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me started on unit test first, but okay. But I think, Jeff...
Yes, absolutely, I agree with unit testing.
Now, I think the title you had is perfect here, in a lot of this discussion. You said separating logic from UI. You didn't say separate code or SQL or whatever from UI. Right?
Yep.
You didn't qualify in the title, at least, what logic meant.
Yep.
So I like the title. And everybody's going to have, these are good things. We could all sit around the table, have some beverages of your choice, and have a great conversation about architecture, software architectures, hardware architectures, native, managed, code, data, all that stuff. And then UI, UI stuff, boy, those are fighting words. But if Serena's there, then it's even a more fun conversation. So
the important thing is, I guess, as Jeff was saying, put some thought into it, make the right decisions, separate things out, make it modular.
Yep.
And then however you decide to stack it up, that's as long as you've made a, informed decision.
And these days, it's not just a conversation about UI. Now we put the UX in there, right? The experience, which, I mean, is sort of a part of maybe either good or bad UI.
Yeah. Actually,
and you could, because you separate them, you could almost offset the UI part to a dedicated person. And you've already developed the back-end code that gets the data, performs the more mathematical parts of the program. All the UI guy needs to do is create your class and call it.
Yeah. Depending on the size of the team, skill. I mean, on the website, I know there's been people who are always like the page designers and form designers using Dreamweaver and other things, doing some lightweight code in JavaScript or whatever. And then there's people who are doing back-end stuff.
I've worked on...
Speaking of that...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've worked on projects where we followed what you're talking about here and broken things apart, and we had a user experience expert. And at first I'm like, seriously, we're going to pay someone money? And I was like, I can do UI. And then talking with the user experience expert, they're like, that's like, oh, wow, I never thought of that before. That's a really good idea. And so that it is, valuable to have someone that, different domains of knowledge on your team. But anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
The cool thing, because we're going to get into the UI stuff and kind of flowing into the web, is that once I created this T-order handler object, I can then create a intraweb project and then implement that into the intraweb project and then have web developers work at it. And so then I have the same object between a web and a Win32 project, and then I can work on making sure my code works, and then the UI guy can work in intraweb, and then the other UI guy can work on the Win32 or Android or iPhone. I have the back-end code. I make sure that works correctly.
Yep, exactly. And then, I was going to say that it would, if you had a VCL app, if you went and followed these steps, you could make it easier to swap out FireMonkey UI and go to mobile. And
that's exactly what I did for a little game I made to test out the Android program, because I'm still learning Android development. I created a VCL program. It was like a little counter thing. Created it all separated from the UI, and then all I had to do is redo the UI, which is a bunch of edit boxes and buttons, and then I started fleshing out Android. But I had the back-end code mostly done.
Yep.
There's a question about, can orders object live bindings? I'm not familiar with live bindings, but I think they're kind of mutually exclusive because it's a custom object and not a form.
So my impression is you can live bind to collections object, but I maybe...
Okay.
Maybe
No, maybe I was wrong in saying that.
You can do it in code. Malcolm did a blog about that.
Yeah, Malcolm has a blog post. That's right.
Yeah.
You can bind. You can bind anything to anything in live binding. You can bind an edit box to a label. You can bind whatever to whatever.
Field to something else.
Public property, published properties, or public properties can be bound.
And in code, you have
yes, public properties because they're RTTI.
Yeah.
Yep.